What is up, everybody, and welcome back to another video. I am the Hobbyist, and today we have got a modification for the Traxxas Tmaxx Classic, and it is a Swaybar kit by FullForce Rc. This just came out at my local hobby shop, and it is for the 2.5 Tmaxx, the Emaxx, and the SportMaxx. Don't know if the SportMaxx is still around, but I know the Tmaxx Classic and the Emaxx is. So this is my Tmaxx Classic, and I'm going to be installing it, showing you how it works, how it all goes together, and then I'm going to be showing you whether or not it works. So without further ado, guys, let's get right into it. So when you open up the package, you get a few things, the first of which you get an instruction manual on how to install it. You get the Swaybar links themselves. So this has got two links here, and this is what connects the suspension arm to the sway bar. You've got the two rocker arms for the sway bar, and then here is the link that connects the rocker arms, and all of these stuff make up the sway bar. Also in the package, if I can get it out, it includes all of the hardware you are going to need, bushings, everything, as well as a little Allen key if you don't have your own. And finally, because every RC company has to have them, a sticker sheet. So that's what you get in this package, and it will give a sway bar to one side of your truck. It is compatible with both front and rear. I have already installed the rear. You can kind of see it a little bit here. I'm going to be installing it on the front for you, but first I want to show you how exactly this sway bar works. So how this sway bar works is pretty straightforward. On the front, you can see there is no sway bar. So I'm going to lift up the back so that the rear sway bar doesn't affect this test. When I twist it, you will notice it is very easy for it to just lean to one side. And with monster trucks, this is really, really bad because of their high center of gravity. When you try to make a turn, it twists and just falls over. Now let's look at the back end. The back end does have the sway bar, so I'm going to lift up the front so it doesn't skew the test. When I try to twist it, it's preventing me. What is happening is it's forcing the chassis down and lower. So I'm trying to twist just like I did on the other one, and it's not letting me. Instead, it's forcing the suspension down, and that's exactly what a sway bar is designed to do. Instead of just letting your suspension roll over like this, it is instead preventing that by, when one wheel tries to compress, it takes the other wheel with it, which then forces the chassis lower, reducing the center of gravity, and instead of rolling over, you would have more traction, and in some cases do a little bit of a power slide. But it keeps you from falling over. And with nitro monster trucks especially, I don't want to have to roll it over far away from me because there's a chance that the engine will stall. But with that, let's get into installing the sway bar on the front. So, as I said, the kit comes with an Allen key. It's a 2mm Allen key, but if you have your own set of hand tools like I do, I just recommend using that because it's going to be much easier on your hands. So to start off, I'm going to do this exactly the same way as I did the rear sway bar, and it's a pretty simple installation process. So to start off, we're going to put these links and connect them to the suspension arms. Now, a bit of a disclaimer, I'm running the RPM suspension arms with RPM shock dust guards. So as a result, I had to move my shock to the innermost position, and then this is going to go on the outermost position. I don't know if that's true with the stock arms. I assume that it isn't, since the stock arms are much thinner, but that's just a thing to note if you're running the RPM suspension arms. So what you're going to do is take this screw right here. It's the only countersunk screw, so it's very easy to tell. There, countersunk. So you're going to put it in like so, and you're going to screw in the link onto the extra shock mount on the suspension arm. So it's an RPM arm, I have to pre-thread it. So tighten this up. Whoops. All right, that's that link connected. I'm going to do the same on the other side, and then I'll put you guys back on. And in case you're wondering, it doesn't matter which side goes on top, it's exactly identical. All right, so I've got both links on, as you can see right here. They are nicely installed. So now it's time to install the rocker arms. So now these go behind the front shock, and they bolt in to one of these mounts. Now, one is going to end up in a position like this, whilst the other is going to end up in a position like this. And there's a very specific reason for that. So it's up to you, whichever way you put them on. I'm just going to put them on in the same way I did the rear so that it's symmetrical. But one's going to bolt into this bottom screw on your shock tower, and the other one's going to bolt to the top screw on your shock tower. So I'm going to show you what's required. Right. So I've gotten the screw out from underneath, and what I'm going to have to do is take the rocker arm and this special bushing that comes in the kit. If you can see, it is countersunk on one side. That side's going into the countersunk hole that's in your shock tower. So you put it on like that. And then you put a washer on top like that and put a screw through. Now, I want to make a bit of a comment. I have the RPM bulkheads. Now, I tested the included screw, and it was a bit too short. Now, this included screw fit fine in the stock bulkhead, but in the RPM one, it was a bit short. So, if you're running the RPM ones, I recommend just running something a little bit longer, like what I've got right here. This is just long enough that it fits much tighter. So, going to put all of these together like so, and simply screw it in, and make sure to get the rocker arm behind the front shock. So I'm going to push it in and screw it down nice and tight. All right, so I've got the rocker arm nice and tight now, and it pivots just fine. It's not loose by any means. So now it's time to put on the other one. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the other one has to go in the opposite orientation that the other one is. So this one's mounted on the bottom, so this one needs to be mounted in on the top. And there's this very, very specific reason for that, and I'll get to that in a minute. But first, you got to put on the other rocker arm. So I'll do that off camera and put you guys back on. So the next step, now that you have your rocker arms installed, is to connect the rocker arms to the connecting links. And for that, you use this screw. It is your medium length button head screw. I believe it's 10 millimeters long. And you're going to put it through right here and into the rocker arm. Now, important note, since this is going into metal, I recommend putting a little thread locker on. None is included, but just take some blue Loctite or something of that sort and thread lock the rocker arms, or thread lock the screw. So I'll do both of them off camera and show you what the end result is. With the links attached to the rocker arms, when you compress the suspension, the rocker arms will move. Now, I am going to explain to you the reason why these have to be inverted. And that is because when the suspension compresses, they both move up. And as a result, they have to move in synchrony. As you can see, they are moving in the same direction as opposed to moving in opposite directions, in which case the sway bar would lock up and it just simply wouldn't work. But as of right now, the two suspension arms are not connected. That is what this link is for. And to install that link, there are some brass bushings here that go into that hole, along with a washer on top like that, and then a really short screw, also included in the kit, obviously. And that's the whole thing. And since this is going into metal, I also recommend that you put some thread locker on it. And this is going to install at an angle like so. So I'm going to screw that in and show you what the fully assembled sway bar is. With that link installed, the sway bar is complete. It moves well in unison, and the whole system works. Now, why does it work? Well, as with any sway bar, the idea is that it connects the front and or the two sides of the suspension arms on an independent front suspension system. With solid axles, it's a little bit different, but it's the same overall principle. It connects the two sides. And the idea behind this is you still get full suspension compression and the spring rate you want, but in the turn, when it tries to twist, it it can't flip over, right? The idea is it lowers the center of gravity by forcing the suspension down when it tries to compress too much, and you overall just get a much better system. So if I pull it up and then try to compress, I'm going to try and compress this side, and you'll see it's taking the other side with it. I am not touching the other side. That's the sway bar doing that. And that's how the whole system works. Now, the great thing about sway bars helping you not flip over on this particular monster truck, and monster trucks in general, because they're notorious for flipping over. If you've ever owned an RC monster truck, and if you own a Tmaxx or an Emaxx, you're clearly watching this video, they have a very high center of gravity. And with faster monster trucks like this, when you try to turn them, they have a tendency to flip over. Now, typically, you know, it's annoying, you have to go get it, but with nitros, now you're on a ticking clock, because you really don't want the engine to die on you. And when this flips over, the fuel comes in from the bottom of the tank, so it's really, really hard to get there in time. So this will help stop you from flipping over, and you'll be able to turn much faster. Now, this was recommended to me by my local hobby shop owner. He used to race Traxxas Tmaxxes, so he knows, and he used the old sway bar design, which I looked up photos of it, and it didn't really look like it worked all that great. It kind of looked like a homemade job. This system, on the other hand, is very well refined, and it works very, very well. Now, if you're wondering about cost, I can't really speak for other areas, but in my particular area, it was about $24.95 US. So, and that was per sway bar set, so I got two, one for the front, one for the rear, which is what I recommend. If you don't have the money for two sets, I'd recommend getting one and putting it on the front, because that's where it's going to make the most difference. But if you can get both, I'd get both, because then you'll have the most effect. But with that, guys, that is the sway bar kit for the Traxxas Tmaxx Classic and Emaxx by FullForce Rc. I definitely recommend this kit. It works very well. It was very easy to install, came with all of the parts, and it looks fantastic. So I overall definitely recommend. But with that, guys, that's going to do it for the video. Hopefully you enjoyed. If you did, please hit that like button, subscribe, and leave a comment in the section below for what videos you'd like to see next. This is the first video on my new Saturday upload schedule, so hopefully that worked out well for you. But anyway, guys, thank you all for watching. I'll see you in the next one.